The grand chamber was built to make visitors feel small. Hyanwu stood in the center of the vast room and understood why. Above him, the ceiling stretched so high that clouds formed near the top. Around him, holographic projections of alien delegates flickered in their seats, each one representing a species that had traveled the stars for thousands of years. Some looked like crystals. Others resembled plants or insects or things that had no comparison to anything on Earth. They all watched him with expressions he couldn't read. Hyanwu had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 3 years. He thought he understood how things worked here. The Council made decisions, and younger species like humanity followed those decisions. It was simple. It kept the peace across hundreds of worlds. But today felt different. Today, the air in the chamber felt heavy with something he couldn't name. High Arbiter Kelvash rose from the central platform. The being was 12 feet tall and made entirely of transparent crystal that glowed with inner light. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the chamber like a bell. Ambassador Hyanwu of Earth, we have summoned you to address a matter of galactic law. For 10,000 years, every species in this council has paid tribute to maintain peace and fund our peacekeeping forces. This tribute is not negotiable. It is the foundation of our civilization. Hyanwu felt his stomach tighten. He had heard rumors about this, but he hoped they were just rumors. What kind of tribute? He asked, keeping his voice steady. Kelvash's crystal body pulsed with red light. Each species contributes according to its capability. Resources, technology, military forces. Earth has been a council member for 15 years. You have received our protection, our trade networks, our knowledge. Now you must pay your share. A holographic document appeared in front of Hyanwu. He read through it quickly, and his blood went cold. The tribute demanded would strip Earth of 30% of its industrial output, 20% of its military fleet, and access to 5 key technologies that humanity had developed independently. It would cripple Earth's economy. The colonies would starve. This is impossible, Hyanwu said. We're still recovering from our own internal conflicts. Our resources are already stretched thin across 12 colony worlds. If we give this much, millions will suffer. A delegate that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke up, its voice translated by the chamber's systems. Every species makes sacrifices for the greater good. The Korthi gave 50% when they joined. The Talveen surrendered their entire military command structure. Humanity is being asked for far less. Because we're new? Hyanwu asked. Because we're weak? Because you're aggressive? Another delegate said, this one resembling a mantis made of metal. Your species has a history of violence. The tribute ensures you remain focused on peaceful pursuits. It is for your own benefit as much as ours. Hyanwu wanted to argue, but he knew it would be pointless. These beings saw humanity as children playing with dangerous toys. They had been exploring the galaxy while humans still lived in caves. To them, Earth was just another primitive world that needed guidance and control. I need to consult with my government, Hyanwu said carefully. This is not a decision I can make alone. Kelvash light dimmed to orange. You have 7 solar cycles. Return with your answer. The council expects compliance. The chamber dissolved around him, the holograms fading as the session ended. Hyanwu stood alone on the platform, feeling the weight of billions of lives pressing down on his shoulders. He had 7 days to save his species or condemn it. On the shuttle back to the human delegation ship, Hyanwu sat next to Dr. Taeyong, Earth's leading expert on alien cultures. The older man had been quiet during the session, but now he looked troubled. They're testing us, Taeyong said. This isn't just about resources. They want to see if we'll submit, and if we don't. Then they'll make an example of us. The council has quarantined species before. Cut them off from all trade, all contact. Some never recovered. Hyanwu looked out the window at the massive space station that housed the council. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at its ports. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but it was also full of dangers. Earth was so small in comparison, so vulnerable. What do you think we should do? Hyanwu asked. Taeyong was quiet for a long moment. I think we should remember who we are. Humanity didn't survive this long by kneeling to tyrants. We've faced extinction before and found a way through. Maybe this is just another test, but not the kind they think it is. The delegation ship was called the Horizon's Edge, a mid-sized vessel that served as Earth's embassy in space. When Huyanwu arrived, he found Captain G1 waiting for him in the conference room. She commanded the Indomitable, the flagship of Earth's defense fleet, which was currently stationed in orbit as part of the ambassador's escort. Gi-wan was 10 years, younger than Huyanwu, but had twice as much combat experience. She had fought in the expansion wars, the brutal conflict between Earth and its colonies that nearly destroyed humanity 50 years ago. She had scars on her face and hands, and her eyes were always scanning for threats. I heard, she said when Huyanwu entered. The crew is talking about it. They want to know if we're going to fight the entire galaxy. Huyanwu asked. With what? We have less than 100 warships. The Council has thousands. So we submit? We let them break us without even trying. Huyanwu sat down heavily. I don't know what we do. I need to talk to Earth, get instructions from the President. This is beyond my authority. Yuan leaned forward. Let me tell you something about authority. When I was a lieutenant during the wars, I watched my commanding officer surrender an entire colony because he said we didn't have authority to keep fighting. 3 million people were enslaved by the warlord we surrendered to. Sometimes authority is an excuse for cowardice. Sometimes it's wisdom, Huyanwu shot back. I watched people die because commanders refused to surrender when they should have. Courage without wisdom is just suicide. They stared at each other across the table. Finally, Ji-wan nodded. You're right. I apologize. But I'm telling you now, if Earth decides to fight, my ship will be the first one in line. And if Earth decides to submit, I'll follow those orders too, but I won't like it. Huyanwu sent his report to Earth through the quantum communication link. Then he waited. The response would take 3 days because of the distance and the security checks required for such an important message. 3 days to wonder if humanity would choose survival or dignity. He spent those days learning everything he could about the Council's history. Dr. Taeyong helped him access records that most humans never saw. They learned about species that refused tribute and were destroyed. They learned about species that paid tribute for centuries and slowly forgot who they were. Neither option seemed good. On the 3rd day, the response came. Hunue read it alone in his quarters. His hands shook as he held the datapad. The message was short, just a few paragraphs from President Yuna herself. The Global Assembly had debated for 3 days. They had consulted with every colony, every nation, every leader they could reach. The vote was unanimous. Earth had made its choice. President Yuna stood before the Global Assembly in Geneva. Looking at the faces of representatives from every nation and colony, the chamber was full. Every seat was taken. People stood along the walls. This was the most important decision humanity had made since the first colony ships left Earth. We have a choice to make, Yuna said. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the steel beneath it. The Galactic Council demands tribute. If we pay, we survive, but we lose something essential. If we refuse, we face isolation at best and destruction at worst. Defense Minister Hei-wan spoke first. She was an older woman who had lost her entire family in the expansion wars. Cannot pay this tribute. It will break us economically. Our colonies will starve. Our children will grow up in poverty. And for what? To prove we're civilized? To show we can follow orders? I say we refuse. A representative from Mars colony stood up. Easy for Earth to say, refuse. You have defenses, population, resources. My colony has 2 million people and 3 orbital platforms. When the Council comes for us, we die first. I vote we pay. And what happens in 10 years when they demand more? Another voice called out. Or 20 years. We'll pay forever, getting weaker each time, until we're nothing but servants. The debate went on for hours. Some argued that wisdom meant survival at any cost. Others said that dignity was worth dying for. Some talked about economics. Others talked about history, about every time humanity had faced a stronger enemy and found a way to win through cleverness or courage or sheer, stubborn refusal to give up. Yuna let them talk. She knew that this decision had to come from everyone, not just from her. When the arguments finally slowed down, she spoke again. My grandmother lived through the expansion wars. She was on Europa when the orbital bombardment started. She told me once that the worst thing about war isn't death. It's the moment you realize you're willing to die for something. Because once you know that, you can never go back to being afraid. You're free, she paused, looking around the chamber. The council thinks we're young and scared. They think we'll pay because we don't know better. Maybe they're right. Maybe we should pay. But remember what we learned 50 years ago when we almost destroyed ourselves? We learned that humanity only survives when we stand together, when we refuse to let anyone break us, even ourselves. So I'm asking you now, do we stand or do we kneel? The vote took 3 minutes. When it was done, the result was unanimous. Not a single voice in favor of paying tribute. Some voted out of courage. Some voted out of anger. Some voted because they believed humanity could win. Others voted because they believed dignity mattered more than survival. But they all voted the same way. Yuna recorded a message to be sent to Ambassador Hyan-Woo. She kept it simple. Some decisions didn't need long explanations. Back in the Grand Chamber, every seat was filled. This was unprecedented. Council sessions usually had half the delegates present, but everyone wanted to see what the humans would do. Some came out of curiosity. Others came hoping to see humanity humiliated. A few came hoping to see something different. Hyan-Woo walked to the center of the chamber. He carried no documents, no aides, no staff, just himself. High Arbiter Kelvash's crystal body glowed bright blue with anticipation. Ambassador Hyan-Woo, the 7 cycles have passed. What is Earth's answer? Hyan-Woo activated the holographic projector. President Yuna's face appeared above him, large enough that every delegate could see clearly. She wore a simple suit. No medals, no decorations. She looked like what she was, a leader who had made a hard choice. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the chamber. No, that was it. One word. Then her image faded. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in languages Hyan-Woo didn't recognize. Some stood up. Others slammed their appendages on their seats. The translation system struggled to keep up with the chaos. Possible, someone shouted. No species has refused in 3,000 years. The humans are insane, another voice called. They doomed themselves out of pride. But not everyone was angry. Hyan-Woo noticed a few delegates who sat quietly, saying nothing. They looked thoughtful, or maybe afraid, or maybe something else. High Arbiter Kelvash raised one crystalline arm, and the chamber fell silent. The red glow was back, brighter than before. Ambassador Hyan-Woo, you understand what this means? Refusal of tribute is a violation of council law. There will be consequences. We understand, Hyan-Woo said. His voice was steady. We're prepared to accept those consequences. Are you prepared to watch your colonies starve when we embargo all trade? Are you prepared to see your ships destroyed if they leave human space? Are you prepared for your entire species to be isolated from galactic civilization? We've been isolated before. We survived. Kelvash leaned forward. The movement was slow and deliberate. You misunderstand. Isolation is the minimum consequence. If humanity refuses to comply, the Council has authority to use corrective measures. We have ended civilizations for less than this. A chill ran down Hyan-Woo's spine, but he didn't let it show. Then, I guess we'll see if your civilization is built on law or on threats. The chamber exploded again. Half the delegates were shouting for humanity to be punished immediately. The other half argued about procedure and protocols. Hyan-Woo stood in the center of it all, feeling strangely calm. The decision was made. Whatever came next would come. Kelvash finally restored order. The Council will deliberate. Economic sanctions begin immediately. All human ships are forbidden from leaving their designated space. Any violation will be met with force. You have 30 solar cycles to reconsider. After that, the Council will authorize military action to enforce compliance. This session is concluded. The holograms faded. Haiyanwu was escorted out by security drones that hummed with barely contained energy. As he walked through the corridor toward his shuttle, he felt eyes on him. Other ambassadors, other species, watching the human who had just committed what they saw as suicide. On the shuttle, Dr. Taeyang was already reviewing data. It started. The Council's propaganda networks are calling us barbarians. They're saying we're too primitive to understand civilization. Some are calling for our immediate subjugation. Any good news? Haiyanwu asked. Actually, yes. I'm picking up some unusual communications. Encrypted, but the patterns suggest dissent. Not everyone agrees with the Council's approach. Before Haiyanwu could respond, his personal communicator chimed. Unknown sender. Unknown origin. He hesitated, then opened it. The message was simple. Coordinates in a line of text. Not all of us agree with the Council. Meet us if you seek allies. Haiyanwu showed it to Taeyang. The older man studied it carefully. Could be a trap, or it could be what we need. Either way, we're committed now. Earth said no. The galaxy heard it. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Above them, in orbit around the station, Captain G1 received word of Earth's answer. She stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at her crew. They were young, most of them. They hadn't seen real war. They were about to learn what it meant. All hands, battle stations, she said quietly. This is not a drill. As of now, humanity is at war with the Galactic Council. We may be outnumbered. We may be outgunned. But we are not outmatched in courage. So let's show them what humans do when someone tries to make us kneel. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Weapon systems came online. Shields powered up. The Indomitable and the 6 other human ships in the vicinity formed a defensive formation, and across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings watched and wondered. Some thought humanity was brave. Others thought humanity was foolish. But everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy had just changed, and nobody knew what would come next. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Quantum communication networks carried the story to every council world within hours. Humanity had said no. The images of President Yuna's face, speaking that single word, played on a billion screens. People watched it over and over, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. On the Korthi homeworld, a crowd gathered in the central plaza to watch the broadcast. The Korthi were a species that had been forced into the council 200 years ago after losing a war. They paid tribute every year, watching their world grow poorer while the council grew richer. An old Korthi named Dal stood in that crowd and felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Hope. On Talveen Prime, Commander Rix watched the broadcast in his office. He was a decorated officer in the council's peacekeeping forces. But lately he had started to question what he was keeping peace for. The council demanded more every year. More ships, more soldiers, more resources. And for what? To maintain a system where old species ruled and young species served? When he saw Yuna's face say no, he made a decision. He started making calls to officers he trusted. But not everyone felt hope. On the council's core worlds, the founding species that had built the entire system watched with anger and fear. If humanity could refuse tribute, others might follow. The whole structure could collapse. High Arbiter, Kelvosh, called an emergency meeting of the Inner Council. The 7 most powerful species that truly ran everything. This cannot stand, Kelvash said. His crystal body glowed angry red. If we allow humanity to refuse, we lose everything. Other species will see weakness. They will rebel. Then we make an example, another Inner Council member said. This one looked like living shadow, constantly shifting. We destroy them completely. We make sure every species in the galaxy knows the cost of defiance. 300 council warships gathered at the border of human space. It was the largest military force assembled in 2 centuries. Ships from a dozen species, each one more advanced than anything humanity possessed. They formed a blockade, cutting off all trade routes to human colonies. Nothing went in. Nothing came out. On Mars Colony, Administrator Kyung-soo watched the food supplies dwindle. They had enough for 3 months, maybe 4 if they rationed carefully. After that, 2 million people would start to starve. He sent messages to Earth asking for help, but Earth had its own problems. Every human world was isolated now. It's cut off from the galaxy. Captain G1 coordinated Earth's defenses from the Indomitable. She had 87 warships total, scattered across 12 colony systems. Against 300 council ships, the odds were impossible. But she had fought impossible odds before. Can't win a straight fight, she told her senior officers in a secure communication. So we don't fight straight. We use hit-and-run tactics. We make them pay for every inch of space they take. We make them bleed until they decide we're not worth the cost. And if they don't, one officer asked, then we die fighting, but we die free. Han-woo decided to follow the mysterious coordinates. He took Dr. Tang and a small security team on an unmarked shuttle. If it was a trap, at least they wouldn't lose much. If it was genuine, it might be humanity's only chance. The coordinates led to a neutral station in unclaimed space, far from Council jurisdiction. The station was old, built by a species that went extinct 1,000 years ago. Now it served as a meeting place for traders and criminals. Anyone who wanted to avoid Council attention, they docked carefully. The security team went first, scanning for threats. The station was mostly empty. Just a few scattered life signs in the central hub. Han-woo walked through corridors that smelled of rust and ozone, wondering if he was making a terrible mistake. In a conference room lit by flickering lights, 5 beings waited for him. Han-woo recognized one of them immediately. Ambassador Dahl of the Korthi. He had met Dahl once before at a council function. The old alien had seemed sad then, defeated. Now, he looked different, determined. Thank you for coming, Dahl said. His species had 4 arms and skin like tree bark. We know this is risky, but we needed to speak with you away from Council surveillance. Who are you? Han-woo asked, looking at the others. We are representatives of species who are tired of the Council's demands, a second alien said. This was Commander Rix, still wearing his Council military uniform, but with the insignia removed. We cannot fight openly. The Council would destroy our worlds, but we can help you in secret. The third alien looked like a floating jellyfish. I am Elder May of the Helven Collective. My people have paid tribute for 300 years. We have watched our culture slowly die, our resources drained away. When we saw your president say no, we wept. We thought no one would ever have that courage again. The fourth was a former council arbiter named Vor, who had resigned in protest 2 years ago. The fifth was a traitor named Suk, who controlled information networks across half the galaxy. Why help us? Han-woo asked. If you're discovered, the council will punish you, because someone has to, Dahl said simply. The council is corrupt. It has forgotten its original purpose. It was supposed to maintain peace and encourage cooperation. Now it just takes and calls it civilization. We have waited for someone to stand up to them. You have given us that chance. We spent 6 hours sharing information. The Allies provided intelligence on Council fleet movements, weaknesses in their blockade formations, and most importantly, the political situation within the Council itself. Not all species supported the military action against humanity. At least 20 species were privately sympathetic. Another 15 were neutral. Only the founding species and their closest allies truly wanted war. But they also shared something terrifying. Dr. Taeyang's hand shook as he read the classified document that Vor had stolen before. Resigning. Silence, Taeyang said quietly. They're going to use the silence? Kelvosh nodded gravely. If humanity continues to resist, yes. The Inner Council has already authorized it. What is the silence? Han-woo asked. Taeyan looked at him with haunted eyes. It's a weapon. a network of devices that can manipulate space-time itself. They can collapse a star, turn it into a black hole. It destroys everything in the system. No survivors. No ruins. Just empty space where a star used to be. They've used it twice in Council history, Vor added. Once against the Prelian Empire 5,000 years ago, once against the Zell Collective 2,000 years ago. Both times, entire civilizations were erased in hours. The Council called it necessary for galactic security. Hyan Wu felt sick. They would kill billions to make a point. They would kill billions to preserve their power, Dahl said. That is what we have become. That is why we must help you. If humanity falls, we all fall. We will just fall slower. The Allies promised what they could, intelligence. Resources smuggled through back channels, diplomatic pressure from species that secretly supported humanity. It wasn't much, but it was something. When Hyan Wu returned to the horizon's edge, he found Captain Ji-won waiting for him. She had come in person, leaving her first officer in command of the Indomitable. "We need to talk," she said. They sat in Hyan Wu's quarters. He told her everything about the meeting, about the Allies, about the silence weapon. When he finished, Ji-won was quiet for a long time. "So we can't win," she finally said. "Even if we fight perfectly, even if we hurt them badly, they'll just use this weapon and erase us. Unless we can make them realize the cost is too high. Not just military cost. Political cost. If enough species turn against the Council, they can't use the silence without triggering a civil war. That's a big if. It's the only if we have." Gi-won stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars glittered in the darkness. "I've been thinking about what we're doing, fighting the entire galaxy. It's insane. We're going to lose millions, maybe billions. Future generations will curse us for this choice, or they'll thank us," Hyan Wu said. "Yeah, or that," she turned back to him. "I visited my mother before I left Earth. She's 80 years old. She lived through the expansion wars. I asked her what she thought about all this. You know what she said?" "What?" "She said that her generation fought so that my generation could be free. And my generation should fight so the next generation can be free. She said, freedom isn't something you win once. It's something you have to keep fighting for over and over, or it slips away." Ji-won smiled sadly. "Then she told me to kick some alien ass." Hyan Wu laughed despite everything. "Smart woman. The smartest." Ji-won headed for the door, then paused. "The Council sent us an ultimatum. 30 days to surrender. After that, they attack. How many days left?" 28. "I'm going back to Earth to finalize our defensive plans. When they come, we'll be ready. It won't be enough, but we'll make them remember us." After she left, Hyan Wu sat alone in the darkness. Somewhere out there, 300 enemy ships waited. Somewhere out there, the silence weapon was probably already being positioned. And somewhere out there, billions of beings watched and wondered. What would happen when an unstoppable force met an immovable object? He thought about President Yuna's message. One word? No. It was such a simple word. Children learned it when they were young. But somehow, humanity had forgotten how powerful it could be. How much courage it took to say no to power. How much it cost 20-8 days. Hyan Wu wondered if it would be enough time to change the galaxy. He wondered if anything would be enough. 20-8 days passed, like a countdown to extinction. Earth mobilized everything it had. Every shipyard worked around the clock building weapons. Every soldier reported for duty. Every civilian prepared for the worst. The colonies did the same, each one becoming a fortress. On Mars, Administrator Kyung-soo organized evacuation of non-combatants to underground shelters. They moved food supplies, medical equipment, everything they might need to survive a siege. His daughter asked him if they were going to die. He told her no, but he wasn't sure if he was lying. On Europa, the miners turned their drilling equipment into improvised weapons. On Titan, engineers built remote-controlled mines and hid them in the ice rings. Every human world prepared to fight. knowing they probably couldn't win, but refusing to surrender without a fight. Captain G1 stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching her displays. The human fleet was arranged in defensive positions throughout the Sol system. 87 ships against 300. Her crew was young and scared, but ready. They had trained for this. They knew what was coming. The galaxy watched too. On thousands of worlds, beings gathered around their communication devices to witness what everyone expected to be humanity's final day. Betting markets on neutral stations offered odds of 10,000 to 1 against human survival. Some bet on humanity anyway, not because they thought humans could win, but because they wanted to believe in miracles. High Arbiter, Kelvosh stood in his command center aboard the dreadnought Eternal Judgment. The largest warship in the Council fleet, he felt satisfied. Humanity had refused every chance to surrender. Now they would learn that the Council's authority was absolute. The attack would be broadcast across the galaxy as a lesson to any other species that might think about defying the tribute system. The Council Armada emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 347 ships, the number having grown as more species pledged their support. They formed a battle formation that had been perfected over thousands of years. Perfect geometry, perfect coordination, perfect overwhelming power. Kelvosh opened a communication channel that every ship in the system could hear. Humanity, this is your final chance. Surrender now, accept tribute terms, and submit to temporary occupation. Refuse, and we will take your submission by force. You have 1 hour to respond. Captain Juwan's response came exactly 1 minute later. Her face appeared on every screen in both fleets. High Arbiter, you came a long way to hear the same answer. Here it is. No. Then she cut the transmission and opened fire. The first volley from human ships was crude but effective. Nuclear missiles, railgun rounds, kinetic impactors, everything humans had invented to kill each other over the centuries. The Council fleet's shields absorbed most of it, but 3 ships at the edge of the formation took damage. First blood went to humanity. The Council's response was measured and devastating. Energy beams that could slice through asteroids focused on human positions, missiles that tracked targets through multiple jumps, drones that swarmed like insects. The human ships scattered, breaking formation, refusing to fight the way the Council expected. G-1 had learned from studying every battle in human history. When you're outnumbered, you don't fight fair. You use terrain. You use surprise. You make the enemy's numbers work against them. The Sol system became a maze of ambush, points and kill zones. Human ships hid in the asteroid belt and struck when Council ships passed. They used the gas giant's gravity wells to slingshot into attack runs, and vanished into the radiation belts where sensors couldn't track them. Acrophist drones to lure Council ships into crossfire zones. It was desperate and brilliant, and it shouldn't have worked, but it did. The Indomitable led a charge into the heart of the Council formation. G1 knew it was suicide, but she needed to break their perfect coordination. Her ship took fire from every direction. Shields failed. Hull breaches opened to space. But she got close enough to ram a Council cruiser, and in the explosion, 2 more Council ships collided, trying to avoid the debris. The Council lost 73 ships in the first 6 hours. Humanity lost 35. By any calculation, the Council was winning. But they weren't winning fast enough. And that changed everything. On Talvine Prime, Commander Rix watched the battle on his command screen. He saw Council ships destroying human vessels. He saw human crews fighting to the last breath. He saw courage that his own people had forgotten they possessed. He made a decision that would change his life and possibly the galaxy. He activated his personal communicator and sent out a pre-recorded message to officers throughout the Council fleet. Officers he had served with, officers he trusted, officers who shared his doubts about what they were doing. The message was simple. We are not peacekeepers. We are oppressors. I will not be part of this anymore. Then he ordered his squadron of 12 ships to withdraw from the battle. Alarms screamed in the Council Command Center as the Talvine ships powered down weapons and moved away from the combat zone. They were followed by 8 ships from the Korthi Enclaves and 5 from the Helvon Collective. 25 ships total broke away and broadcast a message across all channels. We refuse to participate in a war of subjugation. The Council has lost its way. We stand with humanity's right to self-determination. The battle paused. For 10 seconds, nobody fired. Both sides tried to process what had just happened. Then Kelvash's voice roared across every channel. Traitors, all ships, destroy the deserters. But the moment was gone. The deserting ships jumped to faster than light and vanished. And in that moment of confusion, humanity struck again. Gay-1, commanding now from a backup station since the Indomitable was crippled, coordinated a concentrated assault on the Council's command ship. Human Marines did something that had never been done in galactic warfare. They boarded a Council dreadnought, using breaching pods that were basically missiles with people inside. They crashed through the Eternal Judgment's hull and fought their way inside. Council crews weren't trained for ground combat. They were used to space battles where you destroyed ships from distance. But humans had spent centuries perfecting close-quarters combat, the Marines. Led by Lieutenant Byung-hoon, cleared sections of the ship room by room. They sabotaged life support systems, destroyed power conduits, and generally made the ship uncontrollable. They didn't try to capture it. They just wanted to prove it could be done. Back on Earth, President Yuna made a decision. She opened a broadcast channel that reached every world in the galaxy, not just the Council members. Hundreds of billions of beings watched as she spoke. My name is Yuna. I am the President of Earth. I want to speak directly to the people of the galaxy, not to your governments or your councils. I want to tell you why we said no. We said no because dignity matters. We said no because freedom matters. We said no because the ability to choose your own path matters. The Council calls this defiance. We call it being alive. Every being deserves the right to live free from tribute, free from forced service, free from the fear that saying no will destroy them. We are fighting for that right. And we invite you to join us, not in war, but in demanding that your own governments respect your freedom too. The message was brilliant propaganda. It reached past governments directly to populations. On dozens of Council worlds, protests erupted. People who had paid tribute for generations suddenly asked why. People who had accepted the Council's authority suddenly questioned it. The battle raged for 3 more hours. The Council fleet regrouped and pressed harder. Mars Colony took a direct bombardment. 200,000 civilians died when orbital strikes overwhelmed the planetary shields. The images of that destruction were broadcast across the galaxy, and they didn't have the effect Kelvash wanted. Instead of showing humanity's weakness, they showed the Council's brutality. Finally, G1 made one last broadcast. She was bleeding from a head wound. Her uniform was torn. Behind her, alarms were screaming, but her voice was steady. To everyone watching across the galaxy, we will not kneel. Not today. Not ever. You can destroy our ships. You can destroy our colonies. You can kill every human being in existence. But you cannot destroy the idea that freedom matters. And if you try, you prove that your council is built not on law, but on tyranny. So come on, take your best shot. The council forces did exactly that. They concentrated their fire on Earth itself, preparing for a final devastating strike that would break humanity's will. But then something happened that Kelvash never expected. A massive energy signature appeared at the edge of the system. Then another, and another. 50 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. They were from species across the galaxy, species that had been watching the battle and making their own decisions. Some were council members. Some were independent. All of them moved to defensive positions around Earth, and leading them was Ambassador Dahl of the Korthi, broadcasting from a warship that should have been decommissioned decades ago, but still had teeth. Hi, Arbiter Kelvash. You made humanity's fight about whether the Council has absolute authority. You were wrong to do that. Because now, this is everyone's fight. and we say no too. Kelvash stood in his command center and realized he had lost. Not the battle, but something bigger. He could still destroy Earth. He could still kill billions. But he would trigger a galactic civil war. The Council would tear itself apart. Everything he was trying to preserve would be destroyed anyway. He made the hardest decision of his long life. All ships cease fire. Withdraw to safe distance. The Council will deliberate. The shooting stopped. Ships on both sides powered down weapons but kept shields up, neither side trusting the other. The battle was over. Humanity had lost 47 ships and 3 million civilians. The Council had lost 96 ships and suffered damage to dozens more. But nobody had one. In the silence that followed, one question hung over the galaxy. What happens next? The ceasefire held for exactly 18 hours. Then High Arbiter Kelvash made his next move. He didn't attack. Instead, he did something far more terrifying. He activated the silence. The device was already in position, hidden at the edge of the Sol system. It had been there for weeks, just waiting for authorization. Now it powered up, drawing energy from the fabric of space itself. The weapon would take 12 hours to reach full charge, then it would collapse Earth's sun into a black hole, consuming every planet, every ship, every living thing in the system, and there was nothing humanity could do to stop it. The activation was detected immediately. Human sensors picked up the massive energy signature. So did the sensors on every ship in the system. Dr. Tez, working from a research station on Luna, analyzed the readings and felt his blood turn to ice. "It's the silence," he reported to Captain G1. "They're going to destroy the sun. We have 12 hours. G1 looked at her remaining ships. They were damaged, running on emergency power, crews exhausted. "Can we stop it?" "I don't know. We've never even seen this technology before. The readings don't make sense. It's manipulating dimensions we can barely detect. Then we die trying." But humanity wasn't alone anymore. The 50 ships that had arrived to defend Earth included some of the most brilliant scientists and engineers in the galaxy. Commander Rix and Ambassador Dahl coordinated with them immediately. They had to find a way to shut down the device. Kelvash broadcast the countdown across every channel. "Humanity, you have 12 hours to evacuate your system. Any ship that remains will be destroyed when the sun collapses. The Council offers this mercy in recognition of your courage, but defiance cannot be tolerated. Earth will serve as a memorial to the cost of refusing Council authority." President Yuna received the message in a bunker deep beneath Geneva. Around her, advisors argued about whether to evacuate. Some ships could escape, taking a few million people to the colonies. But most of humanity would die. Earth would die. Their sun would become a tomb. "We don't evacuate," Yuna said quietly. Everyone stopped arguing and looked at her. "If we run, we prove that the Council can threaten us into submission. We stay. All of us. And we find a way to stop this, or we die free." The decision was insane. It was also the only decision that made sense. If they evacuated, the Council would just use the silence on the colonies next. Better to make a stand here and now. While Earth prepared to die, something unexpected happened across the galaxy. The activation of the silence weapon became public knowledge within hours. Species that had been watching the conflict from the sidelines suddenly realized this wasn't about humanity anymore. It was about whether the Council could commit genocide to maintain power. Protests erupted on 70 Council worlds. Not small protests, but massive demonstrations involving billions of people. On Talvine Prime, half the population took to the streets demanding the Council stand down. On Korthi Homeworld, the Intier, e-government resigned in protest. On dozens of other worlds, military units refused orders to support the Council's actions. The Inner Council met in emergency session. They had never seen anything like this. The galactic order they had maintained for 10,000 years was crumbling. All because one species said no. "We cannot back down now," one Inner Council member argued. "If we deactivate the silence, we appear weak. Other species will rebel. If we use it, we trigger civil war," another countered. Half the council is already in open rebellion. Our own populations are turning against us. Kelvash listened to them argue. He felt the weight of millennia pressing down on him. He had spent his entire existence maintaining the council's authority. Now that authority was breaking apart in his hands. All because he had underestimated humanity's capacity for defiance and overestimated the galaxy's willingness to accept tyranny. While politicians argued, scientists worked. Dr. Taeon coordinated with engineers from a dozen species. They shared data, ran simulations, argued about physics that most of them barely understood. The silence weapon worked by creating artificial gravity wells that cascaded into a runaway collapse. If they could disrupt the field generators, the cascade would fail. But the device was heavily shielded and defended by automated systems. They would need to get inside to shut it down. And they had 9 hours left. Captain G1 volunteered to lead the assault team. She took Marines from 3 different species, volunteers all of them. They approached the device in a small stealth ship, hoping the automated defenses wouldn't detect them until it was too late. The device was beautiful in a terrible way. It looked like a crystalline flower floating in space, petals made of exotic matter that shouldn't exist. Energy pulsed through it in patterns that hurt to look at. G1 and her team breached the outer shell and fought their way inside. The automated defenses were deadly. Half the team died in the first 5 minutes. But they kept pushing forward, following the technical schematics that Taeyang fed them in real time. They reached the core chamber with 6 people remaining and 4 hours on the clock. Inside the chamber, they found something unexpected. The device wasn't fully automated. There was a living operator, a member of the inner council species, monitoring the collapse sequence. The being looked at them with multiple eyes and spoke in a voice like grinding stone. You are too late. The cascade has begun. Even if you destroy me, the device will complete its cycle. G1 raised her weapon. Then we'll die knowing we tried. The being studied her for a long moment. Your species is remarkable. I have lived for 3,000 years. I have seen hundreds of species join the council. Most submitted immediately. A few resisted briefly before accepting the inevitable. But none fought like you. None made us question ourselves like you. Is there a point to this? G1 asked. Her finger was on the trigger. Yes, there is a way to stop the device. But it requires someone to enter the core and manually reverse the cascade. The energy release will be ... fatal. Guan looked at her remaining team members. They were all wounded, all exhausted. They had followed her into hell without question. She wouldn't order any of them to die. Show me how, she said. One of her Marines, a young woman named Yunji, grabbed her arm. Captain, no. Let me. You're needed to lead the fleet. The fleet can manage without me. But your children can't manage without their mother. I've lived my life, Yunji. Let me end it meaning something. Right. Before anyone could argue further, something impossible happened. The inner council operator moved to the core controls and began inputting commands. I will do it, the being said. I have spent 3,000 years enforcing the council's will. Perhaps it is time I enforced my conscience instead. Why? Gi-1 asked. 'Cause you were right. Dignity matters. Freedom matters. And I am tired of pretending otherwise. The being turned to face them. Go. Tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them that even the oldest among us can change. Tell them the silence is finished. The being entered the core chamber. G1 and her team ran. Behind them, the device began to shriek as the cascade reversed. The energy that would have collapsed the sun instead tore the device apart from within. The explosion was visible from Earth, a brief new star that flared and died. The sun continued to burn. Earth survived. When news of the silence's destruction reached the inner council, something broke in them. They had gambled everything on one final show of force, and they had lost. More importantly, they had lost one of their own. The operator who sacrificed themselves became a symbol overnight. If even the inner council questioned their authority, what did that say about their right to rule? Within days, the council held an emergency constitutional convention. Species that had been silent for centuries suddenly found their voices. The debate was fierce, sometimes violent, but slowly a new structure emerged. The tribute system was abolished. Species would contribute to galactic defense and infrastructure voluntarily, not through coercion. The Inner Council was dissolved, replaced by a rotating assembly where every species had equal representation. The silence weapons were destroyed, all of them. In ceremonies broadcast across the galaxy, Ambassador Hyan-Woo participated in writing the new charter. He worked with Dahl, Rix, and representatives from across the galaxy. They argued about every word, every clause. But they were building something new, something that had never existed before. A galactic government based on cooperation instead of domination. It took 5 years to fully implement the new system. During that time, Hyan-Woo became one of the most influential voices in galactic politics. Not because humanity was powerful, but because humanity had shown that power wasn't everything. Courage mattered. Principles mattered. And sometimes saying no was the most important thing you could do. Captain G1 survived the mission, but retired from military service. Her wounds were too severe for her to continue active duty. Instead, she became an instructor at the new Galactic Defense Academy, teaching young officers from dozens of species. Her first lesson was always the same: never follow orders that violate your conscience, no matter who gives them. Dr. Taeyong's work on cross-species. Cooperation became the foundation for the new Galactic Society. He won the highest honors from a dozen worlds. He accepted them all gracefully, but said his proudest moment was watching his grandchildren play with alien children on Mars. None of them caring that they were different species. President Yuna served one more term and then retired. She spent her last years writing a memoir about the crisis. The final chapter was titled simply, No. In it, she wrote, "The easiest word to say is yes. It requires no courage, no sacrifice, no risk. But yes, to tyranny is death by degrees. No is harder. No costs blood and tears and everything you have. But no is how free people live. No is how we stay human." The price had been terrible. 3 million humans died. Thousands more from other species. Mars' colony took decades to rebuild. The scars of the battle remained visible in Earth's orbital space. Debris fields that served as monuments to those who fell. But the galaxy changed. Species that had paid tribute for thousands of years found their freedom. Young civilizations joined the new galactic assembly as equals, not subjects. Trade flourished. Culture mixed and evolved. Problems remained, of course. Freedom is messy. Equality is complicated. But it was better than the alternative. 5 years after the battle, Hyan-Woo attended the dedication of a memorial on Luna. It honored everyone who died during the conflict, human and alien alike. The central monument was a simple pillar with one word carved on every side in every written language in the galaxy. No. An ambassador from a newly independent species approached Hyan-Woo at the ceremony. She was young, her species having only recently developed space travel. "Ambassador, I wanted to thank you. My world was scheduled to join the Council under the old system next year. We would have paid tribute for generations. Because of humanity, we joined as free beings instead." "Thank you," Hyan-Woo said. "But don't thank just humanity. Thank everyone who found the courage to stand up. Thank the Korthi, the Talveen, the Helvons. Thank the Inner Council member who sacrificed themselves. Change required all of us." Still, the young ambassador said, "Your people started it. You said no when everyone else said yes. That takes something special." Hyan-Woo looked up at Earth, hanging in Luna's sky. "Maybe, or maybe we just remembered something important. We remembered that being free is worth dying for. And once you know that, really know it, you can never unknow it. You're free forever, even if they kill you. Especially if they kill you." That night, Hyan-Woo stood alone at the memorial and thought about President Yuna's message, about Captain G1's sacrifice, about Dr. Taeyong's work, about everyone who made this moment possible. They had changed the galaxy with one word. Not because no was magic, but because no was true, and truth, spoken with courage, is the most powerful force in the universe. Across the stars, on thousands of worlds, beings looked up at the night sky and knew they were free. They knew that if tyranny ever returned, they had an example to follow. They knew what one word, spoken with conviction, could accomplish. And in the darkness between the stars, humanity's ships patrolled alongside vessels from 100 other species. Not as